Welcome to Nice Ashes. I'm Nate.
And I'm Mike. What are we smoking today, Nate?
Well, we are going to be smoking. I guess I should look at it, huh? This is a Saison by Oliva, and this is the First Harvest 2009.
So it is. This is the first in a series. We also have to say that this is a first time for the show.
Yeah, first time in 2 seasons. We're actually both at Nate's place today, and I've been working on my car, so I had to put engine components back in the under the hood so that we had enough room on the workbench here to do our show. There we go. We're lit. Nice, easy light.
It is, yeah.
Good. We're enjoying a Goose Island IPA from Chicago.
It is from Chicago, huh?
Yep.
I never thought about it. I drink a lot of this stuff in the winter because the establishments that I go to regularly to endeavor in a sporting event, they usually only have one good beer. And Goose Island happens to be the one that the distributor up north has.
Yep.
So
I'd say first couple puffs is pretty nice, pretty good, smooth.
It is. I was expecting it to be good. It's an Oliva. It's a very reputable brand.
Yep.
Most people can find them in their local cigar shops.
Is it Oliva or Oliva?
It's Oliva.
Oliva?
Yeah. I think like Boliva, but
okay.
Oliva.
Yeah, and we've talked at length, ad nauseum, about how I can't pronounce things because I just read them and make up my own pronunciations in my head.
Interestingly enough, that's going to be part of our show today.
Yes.
Is accents and whether or not accents are offensive, even if they're accurate.
Yes. So for our episode today, we really we did a lot of homework, about an hour and a half worth each.
Yes.
And then some additional extra credit time because we've got a little fun activity after we're done talking about the main topic. But we wanted to watch. I don't think it's considered. It's not Birth of a Nation, so it's not the most racist film ever made. I don't know if you ever saw Birth of a Nation.
I have not, but I want to.
I've seen some of it, right? And like the Ku Klux Klan definitely plays a major role as like the heroes in that film.
I've seen the one scene where they come over the hill and they're like angels, kind of, but they're the Klan. And
yeah. So, and it's not. And actually, Gone with the Wind has kind of taken some heat.
Yes,
within the past, I don't know, 10, 15 years maybe, for its portrayals of the Deep South.
Specifically Mammy.
Yeah.
And the relationship between slaves and their masters.
Yes. So the movie that we watched was, you can find this online. I'm not going to tell you how or where, but it's on, I think, the internetarchive.com. So it's definitely within public domain, I believe.
It should be, yeah.
And or if not, like this is kind of like a fan restoration where they found the 35 millimeter prints from a theater somewhere and kind of took their time to scan it in and color grade it and clean up some of the dust and stuff. But this is one Disney does not want you to see. It's called Song of the South from 1946.
Yes, and I've been wanting to watch this since I was in college. I've always wanted to see it. It's always been controversial.
And it's where the song Zippity Doo-Dah comes from.
Yep.
That made its debut in this film. And some of the actors are Academy Award winners, the first ever black actors to win an Academy Award.
Both of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, both the man and the woman were in the show.
So we're going to go through Song of the South, and then our fun activity at the end is if we were making a remake of it today, who would we cast? And would we change things? Because I was thinking about that too. Like, would we change some of the storyline or some of that stuff? So We're just going to kind of go through it. And I think let's get the big elephant out of the way first.
Okay.
Do you think this film was racist?
I think that it has elements that are not sensitive for the times today. But I don't think it crosses the line into outright racist rhetoric. I think a lot of the points that they had were nuanced, which was common in film of that era. And there were 2 things that stuck out that might be racist to me. Okay? And I don't want to step on your...
No, well, so I just want to say I didn't really feel anything was overtly racist. It's certainly a film from the 1940s. So, you're going to get whatever from it, right? But it's set in the Reconstructionist South, so not... plantation, full-on slavery South. That doesn't mean that Reconstruction was great and Reconstruction had no racism or anything like that. It's set in kind of in a different period than you would think because, yes, the white people still live at the plantation and there's still the black people working the farm and stuff. But I think you can tell, especially with some of the dialogue between Uncle Remus and the grandmother, that it's a working relationship, not a
Master
slavery
slave.
relationship.
Yes.
So
right, and we discussed Frederick Douglass and his accounts of slavery, and even in his account, there was only one time in his life where he saw the sort of outright beating of somebody, and it was over sex. It wasn't really over work. It was it was competition between the master and a slave over a slave woman. So anyway, but yeah, there were two things that stood out to me as problematic in the modern sense, and that was the accent of the little boy, Uncle Remus's nephew.
Yeah,
like the little.
I don't know if that was really the. Oh, maybe it was actually the nephew, Toby, the one that was showing the little white boy around.
Yes, his accent was a little too much. I thought. And then,
but also it was the 1940s, so perhaps he did talk that way.
Well, that's the question. Is like Uncle Remus had an accent that seemed to be authentic to what the Southern slave plantation American English would have been, because that was a very specific dialogue that did exist.
Yeah,
and was trying I guess the original Stories of Briar Rabbit had that lingo in there when it was written.
Okay,
and because they were written in the 1880s. And there was an active attempt to capture that.
Well, it's
capturing
part of it's like history, capturing history. So retelling these stories, they came out of a racist period of time. These stories,
yes,
but they're not necessarily racially driven stories, but they're from a subset of people that were enslaved. And it was their, let's just say, fairy tales.
It's the folklore of the slaves that lived on the plantation, largely recorded in the Reconstruction era. So there's going to be elements that are not comfortable for modern audiences, obviously.
Yeah, and again, this is a Disney film, and, so they're not really going to delve into the ups and downs of slavery and things like that. This is more, we wanted to portray these stories. They came out of Reconstructionist South, so let's set it in the Reconstructionist South and give an uncle or an elderly black man the lead or the role of telling these stories of his people.
Right.
I feel like if you would make Uncle Remus a white person, there would be outrage, because how could a white person tell stories with African background? Like, there's a big thing where they want the if you have a gay character, it needs to be played by a gay actor.
Right.
Which I don't agree with, because that's acting.
No, you don't really
pretenders. You don't really have to, like, there are no sorry, Simha, but there are no Jedi. So they're pretending to be a Jedi.
Right. They're adult pretenders. So, and the second thing that I found, and this was something that Sarah and I both agreed on, they had two scenes where they had the sharecroppers going in and out of the field.
Yep.
And they were too chipper. They should have been, obviously this is a 1946 movie made in segregationist America. Yeah. So they couldn't have the sharecroppers not want to be sharecroppers.
Yeah.
So I do understand, but they probably should have been a little bit more sour about being sharecroppers on a plantation.
And some of it too is it's a Disney film.
It's a Disney
film. They're not
film,
going to go into, the ins and outs of sharecropping. It's for kids. It's not really designed to be a super heady film for us to analyze.
And in context, this is the era where I think that Frank Sinatra was blacklisted at this exact time because he wouldn't do segregated shows in the South.
Okay.
Yeah, he was blacklisted for years before basically his Las Vegas show got too big and they just couldn't shut him out of the industry anymore because it's just tour de force.
Yeah. Well,
but it was, it's Frank. It's Frank and, Sammy Davis Jr. All these guys that
at the height of their careers.
Yeah. So, this is a very different political time. And,
and it's a Disney film. Nowadays, like Disney Pixar, they'll put things in their movies for adults. But if you go watch Bambi or, any of the other kind of like quintessential Disney animated movies, Aladdin, they don't really, the genie's a slave, but they don't really, he's beholden to the lamp and he has to do what the lamp holder wants to do, but they're not putting in all of these things for you to analyze because it's a movie for kids.
Right. Like Fox and the Hound and Bambi don't get into the intricacies of modern American
hunting,
wildlife, game fishery rules.
And Fox and the Hound, we've been rewatching that one quite a bit with our daughter. And, that's kind of like maybe the subplot is, because it's a fox and a hound, and hounds hunt foxes. So it's kind of like desegregation, right? Kind of the theme of the movie, but that's reading into it. Like a kid is going to be like, oh, okay, they're supposed to hunt each other, but they're friends, like, hey, I've got friends that look different than me. That's fine. Whatever. It's cool. Right. But they're not really going into, is fox hunting ethical?
Well, yes. And Song of the South did. I'm somebody who watches older films, and so are you. So I'm already primed to understand the subtext built into those stories. Yeah. They will not outright say in a film noir film, they're not going to show the murders and the rapes, usually, right? They're going to insinuate that it happened, but they are not going to directly tell you that this occurred.
And this is, I don't know, maybe 20 years later, but Psycho, they show the knife coming up, they show stabbing sounds, and then they show like Hershey syrup going down the drain, but you don't actually see...
You don't see anything happening. And that
brutality, that was graphic because of how effectively they portrayed it on film. And this is a kid's movie, so you're not going to get really the same level of...
Grandma is not going to be outright racist. It's the context of the dialogue.
There was one scene when she was talking to Uncle Remus, and it was borderline, but then they kind of like de-escalated it. And they were like, oh, we were just joking with each other because we've been around each other for that long, kind of thing. And I was like, whew, that was almost like I thought that was going to push us over.
They made Grandma look, well, in the movie, there's 4 bad people, I would say. Yeah. And they're all white.
Well, let's sum up the plot summary first.
Okay.
And then we'll go into the 4 bad people.
Yes.
So it's he's got to be 8 or
he's a little
10
little
or
child.
Something, like a little child. And he's riding in the carriage, some really awkward scenes with his mom and dad, who are getting a divorce.
They're not getting a divorce
or something.
They're in Reconstructionist South, and his dad is getting death threats for articles that he's making in the newspaper.
Yes,
and the grandmother politically disagrees with his newspaper articles. So the subcontext that I read into it is he is probably pro-desegregation and pro-reconstruction, whereas his mother-in-law is pro the sharecropper system.
And she's older Southern, and they're coming from, I think, Atlanta. So they're city people.
They're city people.
And by and large, city people are more progressive or liberal or what have you, right? Like they're more inclusive and want to be on that cutting edge.
And the wife was clearly not a fan of this guy being active in whatever politics he was doing, and she was kind of one of the baddies too. So you can get the subcontext as they're talking about segregation behind the
curtain. They go to this plantation, which is the father/husband's mom.
No, wife's mom.
Oh, the wife's mom.
Wife's mom.
I thought it wasn't, because the dad kept saying, I remember growing up and hearing Uncle Remus's stories.
Oh,
and he said that multiple times. So I feel like it was his family plantation.
It could be.
And then that would add a little bit extra to his kind of maybe guilt about the whole system, why he would be pro-Reconstruction. Mm-hmm. And abolishing slavery and integrating fully. But I think it was his, because he was telling his son on the carriage ride about Uncle Remus and the funny stories about Briar Rabbit and all that stuff. I feel like it was his mom. But then they drop him off there, and the kid gets like really upset that the dad is going back to Atlanta.
Yes.
Like really, really upset. And then the grandma has Toby, a boy of similar age, black boy.
Yes.
I can't even remember the white kid's name.
Johnny,
that's right. Be Johnny's kind of guide to show him around the plantation and all that stuff. So
yes, the black boy was Aunt Tempe's nephew.
Okay.
I don't know if Aunt Tempe was related to Uncle Remus or not. It's hard to say how this all goes.
Yeah. Like we said, it's a Disney movie. They're not really spending screen time explaining how everybody's related.
Yeah.
It's just like, here's the family plantation, here's grandma, here's, black people.
Yes.
And let's go get this done. So,
right.
But of course, the boy is very interested in Uncle Remus, and every older black man that he sees, he asks if that's Uncle Remus. And then he decides that he's going to sneak out and sneak back to Atlanta, which has to be like a 500-mile walk or something. ridiculous. Right, and then he happens upon Uncle Remus himself, and the rest of the movie kind of continues. And that's like the first, 10, 15 minutes of the movie.
Right. And Uncle Remus saves the day because he catches Johnny in the act of running away, and he manipulates the child back to the manor house.
Yeah. Well, he says he's going to go with him, and goes through the motions of packing up, and like, well, it's a mighty long walk, and it's going to be, do you have any food? And Johnny's like, no, I don't have any food. And he's like, oh, well, we better go back to my place and get some food. And then, of course, there's the fire, and he starts telling stories. And then, he's like, hey, let's go. We got to get going to Atlanta. And the little boy's like, well, maybe we can stay here.
Yeah. So he walks back to the plantation. Yeah. And
Yeah, but now you were saying there's 4 main bad guys.
Oh, there's 4 main bad guys. So this story is Johnny's adventures on this plantation. And there's some poor white people who are probably the overseers of the sharecroppers. So they're baddies. The adults are the baddies, but they're kind of behind the scenes. There's 2 boys and a little girl. And one of the pivotal moments is when the little boys were torturing some dogs, and they were threatening to drown a puppy.
Yeah, the runt.
Runt. And the little girl steals the puppy away and gives it to Johnny. And then, long story short, Johnny's mom, who's also one of the baddies, tries to force...
You see what she was dressing him in?
Yes.
Like, that's baddie level right there. Yeah, before she even opens her mouth.
Yeah, she was dressing him in, like, little girl's clothes and all this sort of stuff.
Well, I'm sure it was, like, city gentleman, little kid wear. But, back in that... I think it was a modern invention around, like, the 1950s where they actually stopped putting boys and girls, baby boys and baby girls in the same clothes. They used to just put both genders in a dress. Yes. Because it was easy to change the diaper. It didn't matter.
The Amish do it until they're like 3 or 4 years old.
Okay. Yeah. There wasn't any like blue or pink associated with any gender. And then, corporations found out they could make a lot more money if they, gendered their baby clothing.
Right. You had to double up.
Yeah. So... so I think some of it's that, and some of it's like, what would the aristocrats be wearing in Atlanta be wearing? And I mean, this is some frilly stuff. Like
very
frilly. It's not Tom Sawyer running around the riverbanks kind of gear, but he's running around in his fancy suits around the plantation, and of course getting mocked by it by the poor boys, the poor white boys.
Right.
I don't think any of the black boys or black characters had any issue with his outfit.
No,
it was only the poor white.
The poor whites So the poor whites are torturing animals and doing all this crazy stuff. Like I say, it's all subtext, right? Like they're not very nice, these poor white people. Yeah. And anyway, Johnny's
you can like read into that stuff, but I think it's a Disney movie, and just for the kids, right? Like the kids are just like, oh, these are some white people that live there. Probably the kids are just like, these are some people that live there that are kind of nasty.
Yeah, exactly.
Like the daughter's nice, but the dad is gone.
The dad was not present largely.
Yeah, he showed up at the end, but he must have been on a business trip or something.
He was out in the fields overseeing, I'm guessing.
Oh, maybe.
Yeah.
But he didn't, because the movie spans several days.
Yes.
I believe.
Yeah, very clearly several days.
But the husband was never there, and they kind of made a big whole thing like, Daddy's back.
Yep.
So... I don't know where, I can't remember. Maybe he was on business in
who knows? He's not really a character.
It doesn't matter.
In the story. Yeah. He's not even, he's even when you see him on screen, he's in the background.
He's so far back.
Yeah. So, his mom's kind of a baddie, and so Uncle Remus takes the dog, which is against the wishes of the mother, and it all gets found out, and the mom freaks out on Uncle Remus.
And pretty much forbids Uncle Remus from associating with Johnny at all.
Yep.
In a very weird way.
It's subcontext, right? Like she is not a nice lady.
Yes.
Not a nice lady at all. Anyway, Johnny ends up getting run over by a bull and somehow survives, and then his dad shows up. Uncle Remus saves the day again.
Well, yeah, and the weird thing at the end was Johnny's mom was such a complete and utter bitch to Uncle Remus, and at the end, like, his Uncle Remus was packing his bags to leave his home to get away from them.
Yeah.
And then like the bull thing happens, and then he's just back and happy again, and the mom never once apologized to him.
Right.
So
the mom was so unpleasant that Uncle Remus thought it was better for him to leave than to stay. Let's put it that way. Yeah. Like, there's a lot of subtext that I don't understand why this is supposed to be some super racist film, because the subtext is all there. It's clear as day if you watch it critically.
Yeah. And it's all there, and I feel like it shows everyone that could be offended, or who you think would be offended. It shows everyone there in a really positive light. Like, there are no bad villains of this story that are black.
No, all the main characters are black, and they're all goodies. Yeah. If not outright heroic type characters who keep on saving these children from injuring themselves on this plantation unsupervised by their parents.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, and they're shown to be doing things and working and being productive.
Yeah, they're productive members of the society.
And the white people aren't. They're just kind of like dressing up their boy in little like girl dresses and
and being
lace collars.
Yeah, being psychotic a-holes to the people who are helping them.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't think it's racist. I think if you're going to try and explore. It's a movie. Those kind of themes in a Disney film, like this, is probably the movie to emulate.
Yeah, it's a movie from a different era. And, like I say, Uncle Remus was the main character, a hero type. He did not have a crazy accent. Probably, I mean, I think he was trying to be accurate to, like, that era. But it wasn't absurd by any means.
It wasn't so much an accent as it was more of a cadence.
Yes.
Yeah, and, exactly. Using some of the words that one would expect an older black Southern person of that, era to use, because by and large, the enslaved people at the time were forbidden from learning to read or write. So they just kind of
it was
used slang more so.
Definitely banned. So
the only thing that I didn't like was Uncle Remus calling Johnny Honey all the time.
Yeah, and
which was weird, but I think that's just a 1940s thing.
Southerners still do it. There's somebody I know who happens to be a black lady who's from the South, and she calls everybody honey and sugar all the time. And she's in her 50s, and that's just how she talks.
Yeah.
So, I'm assuming that's just like original to the stories that were written in the 1880s, for God's sakes, It's definitely a different era.
Yeah, and so this movie kind of plays out, if anyone has seen Bedknobs and Broomsticks.
Yes, I have.
Right, and that's like, that one is still out. You can watch it on Disney Plus and everything, but that has a theme of Nazism through there because it's set during World War II.
Yes.
And stuff. And so I don't see why that one could be okay and Song of the South is somehow not okay. But the point I was trying to make was that in Bedknobs and Broomsticks, it's largely a live-action film. But they have sequences of animated sections where the live actors are interacting with animation. Mm-hmm. So it's like the precursor to Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
Yes.
Or, any of the Marvel movies.
Yeah, basically.
So, and all of the Breyer stories are animated.
They have Uncle Remus through them
will sometimes walk or appear in the animation as a live actor to kind of bookend or set us in the direction we need to go in the animated world story.
Yes. We kind of overviewed. I wanted to talk about Aunt Tempe.
Yes.
Because Aunt Tempe was played by Hattie McDaniel. And Hattie McDaniel is Mammy from Gone with the Wind. And that just came out a couple years before. And she won an Academy Award for it. And that performance has been criticized as being stereotypical and racist. And maybe it was.
Her Gone with the Wind.
Her Gone with the Wind role.
Just so we're clear.
Yeah, and Hattie McDaniel herself defended it, saying that her own grandmother was a slave on a plantation who was a domestic.
Yep.
And so she was like, well, hold on a second here.
Yeah.
Yeah, like this is accurate to her perception.
Yeah.
But in Song of the South, Hattie McDaniel was speaking in her normal voice.
Yeah.
There was no accent at all. I mean, she sang.
Yeah.
And she was just the domestic in the household with a normal voice. And I thought for sure that was going to be the zinger.
Yeah.
And it wasn't. It was just
that was kind
normal.
That was weird because like the whole film, like you're told it's such a racist film.
I was waiting for the shoe to drop.
And Disney is, actively trying, and they did, I guess, release it, but I don't think they released it on DVD or anything. They might have just done
never released in the States.
Some theatrical stuff, or in the States.
It was never released in the States.
But I know even as old or as recent as 2010, they had a release. But it was out. But I think it's a terrible transfer.
Oh, okay.
And that's why this 35 millimeter restoration
was
such a good one. But yeah, I was, you're being told that this movie is offensive and racist, and I just kind of kept watching it and like on edge almost. Like, is this where they're gonna are they dropping like the N-word in here, or like what makes this movie so racist? And I was waiting for something, and it was very, very much benign in my opinion.
It was benign, and like I say, a critical viewing, which I was doing automatically. The subtext of the whites being bad was there for sure throughout the whole thing. And I just don't know what else you can expect from a movie from 1946.
Yeah.
Even so, I did more research, like I do.
Yeah.
The actor that played Uncle Remus, now I can't remember his dang name, of course. I got his name in my thing here. James Bassett was 44 in 1948. So he was in his, 41?
Yeah.
Playing Uncle Remus, and he died in 48.
Yeah.
But he didn't go to the premiere because it was segregated, and he didn't go.
Yeah.
McDaniel went, but he protested it.
Okay.
And then after his death, Disney was the one that put his name forward to get an Oscar for the film.
Okay, yeah.
And that's why he got an Oscar. So this film has 3 Oscars, or 2 Oscar winners, and an Oscar-winning song in the movie.
Yeah.
It's insane. And the song is good.
It's a good song, yeah. They parody it, and this makes that bit in, it's the second Fletch movie with Chevy Chase. There's a scene where he inherits a plantation, and so he goes down to live at this plantation. And then there's a whole scene where he does Zippity-Doo-Dah, and he's in a white, the white cotton suit, and the animated bluebird comes on his shoulder, of course.
Yep.
Like, it's a huge parody of Song of the South.
Yeah.
But it doesn't hit home for our generation because none of us have been able to see Song of the South because Disney pulled it.
Right.
I
also think this could easily be remade.
Yes.
Make a good remake.
And that's where our fun little activity is. I think we're about halfway with the cigars.
Yeah, we're about there.
Halfway-ish. We can do a quick cigar check, and then we're going to do kind of our, if we were to remake it today, and kind of go through that.
Yeah. I like it.
I like it. It's good.
Yep.
It's smooth.
It's got a little bite.
Got a little bit of a bite.
I was worried about that when we first lit it up.
Yeah, I was a little apprehensive.
But it's turned out to be good.
It's good. It's good. So
I was expecting a good cigar. I will not tell a lie.
I don't think I've had an Oliva. Sorry.
I don't know,
The
man.
emphasis on the wrong syllable.
Yeah. Think of Bulova watches.
Okay.
And then take the B off.
Yes.
I think. Again,
probably.
It's all accents.
Yeah.
Like this Song of the South thing. It's like, well, is the accent offensive? I don't think so. It's not over the top.
If the accent is historically accurate.
It didn't seem over the top to me.
But nothing seemed over the top. And we just watched Murder by Death, which I think is from the 60s. And it's kind of like Clue, but Peter Sellers is in it.
Okay.
Then, of course, there's a lot of famous actors in it. And, of course, Human. Truman Capote is in it. And some other people. It's not important. But Peter Sellers plays a Chinese person the entire film.
Right.
And, it's like that is still out there and you can still get it. But that, to me, is like, that's kind of
what's the movie
in poor taste.
That had Marlon Brando as a Japanese guy?
Was it Marlon Brando or was it Mickey York?
I thought it was Marlon Brando. But
I don't know. There was
there
was one. And then there was one whole James Bond movie with Sean Connery where they're like, we're going to make you look Asian. And so they put like extra eyelids on him or something for one scene, and then and they gave him like a bowl cut.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, but that's more offensive to me than anything in Song of the South.
Oh, for sure. I mean, the Genghis Khan where John Wayne.
Genghis
Khan. Like, really? I think the reason, and this is just my opinion, I think the reason why those are more acceptable is because they're making fun of Asian people, and Asian people are largely integrated into the majority culture in America.
Yeah. I mean, that doesn't mean it's not offensive.
It does not mean it's not offensive.
But in that era, that was kind of the thing to do in Hollywood pictures, I think, was make fun of Asians for a bit.
Right. It's like Native Americans and early Westerns, right?
Yeah.
Some of the older Westerns, I thought about this too. The later John Waynes and the Clint Eastwoods, the Native Americans are sympathetically portrayed openly.
Yeah.
But even in the earlier black and white stuff.
Well, and a lot of those, like the speaking roles of the Native Americans were given to white actors.
Yes.
But I think still one of my favorites is The Searchers with John Wayne. Because that's like, John Wayne is very much like the villain throughout that whole thing.
Right.
Up until the end.
Yeah.
But it kind of, it's almost like, what was that movie with Clint Eastwood? Grand
Torino,
where he's like the angry guy sitting on his porch.
Yeah,
like that's like The Searchers is John Wayne's kind of like version of that, or whatever, where he's like the angry racist guy that you're like, and he fought for the South. Remember, he came back from the war, and he never really talked about his war stuff, but he was very clearly a Confederate soldier.
Yeah, very clearly. Yeah, on the racist side of the spectrum, openly.
So I mean, but it's a great film because it's more of a character study and less of which race is good or bad. I mean, there's some of that, but like it's more a character study and things. So, and like this, like Song of the South is all kind of like little morality tales. So it's like original series Star Trek, where it's like there are little things where Briar Rabbit has to get himself out of these troubles. There was one scene, and I looked it up because it was such a silly term to me, the tar baby. Yes. And they made the tar baby. And so apparently that's something from other cultures, and they ball up some tar and then you get stuck in it, right? So but it has been used as a racist slur, but it didn't originate as one.
It has. So I looked this up. So the tar baby story, the best version is from 1880, and it comes from Uncle Remus. And there's a long history. There's versions of it. They've surfaced in Nigeria, Brazil, Corsica, Jamaica, India, the Philippines, and the American South. And it has a long story based in the slave cultures of those countries. And the subtext is the stories of how they were captured and became slaves. Okay. Right? So this is like a folklore tale from the slaves' perspective about how they were captured and forced into slavery. And that's why the fox and the bear are like the baddies, right? And they aren't dumb. I mean, they're not the wise character. The rabbit is the wise character. And the rabbit is supposed to be the person in the story, or the being in the story you're identifying with.
Yeah.
So,
but he's kind of like, he's almost like a Bugs Bunny, because he definitely is a troublemaker.
Mm-hmm.
And he thinks he's too smart to get caught, but he gets caught in every story. And then he has to be smarter than he was to get into it, to get out of it. So
right, exactly.
And that's kind of the whole theme of the thing is, the stories I think that Uncle Remus in this movie picked were stories that would resonate with Johnny to get him to be okay with his dad not being there, and just like
right. And the stories relate to whatever fiasco Johnny got himself.
Yeah.
That Uncle Remus had to go and find Johnny and save him from himself. Yeah. That's the theme over and over again. Is Uncle Remus is saving Johnny from the natural consequences of Johnny's actions. Yeah. As he's running around Johnny, unfamiliar environment.
Yeah, Johnny gets to fuck around, and Uncle Remus prevents him from finding out.
That's correct. Yeah. Johnny's running around in an unfamiliar environment doing dangerous things, and Uncle Remus continually...
Making enemies with the hillbilly boys.
Enemies with the psychotic hillbilly boys.
That were going to drown a dog. Like, if they would have had a sack big enough for Johnny, I think they would have just dropped him in the river.
Right, yeah, they were like torturing the dog on screen. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, it didn't have the PETA disclaimer at the end.
This is before that. Yeah. I would say that the least kid friendly things were the stories with the cartoons, because they're talking about skinning the rabbit alive.
Yeah, skinning the rabbit,
burning him, and wanting to cut his head off, or bash his brains in. And all
pretty explicit things they were going to do to this animated rabbit.
Yes, and again, if you look at the context of the stories, the rabbit are the slaves, and the fox and the bear represent the slave captors or the slave masters. Yeah, and they're the baddies, right? Like, this is the context of the story. It's kind of interesting.
Okay, well, let's go through some of the casting stuff. I've got IMDb up on the laptop here, and we can do it on our phones too, in case we mention actors. Because I tried not to go super well known with some of the people.
Okay.
But just who I felt would do it justice.
Okay. So, I went two different routes.
Yeah.
This is going to be a treat for you guys.
Yes.
Because I did a real one that I thought, and then I did one where I'm trying to imagine myself in the place of modern Disney.
Yeah. So, well, let's go through both of our ones, and then we'll do the politically correct or the modern Disney one.
Yes.
And then we'll talk about any plot points in future.
Sounds good.
So, I don't know. Do you just want to start with Uncle Remus?
Yeah, I'll start with Uncle Remus.
All right.
I think that Uncle Remus should be Denzel Washington.
Okay.
And the reason why I think this is because if they were to remake it, they would have to have the main actor have some gravitas and respectability and enough talent to be able to sing and to be able to do a little dance number and to be active enough to save Johnny in these misadventures. Yep. And Denzel's old enough to be the grandfatherly character.
I can see that. I don't know if Denzel sings.
I guarantee you Denzel can sing.
But you know what? It doesn't even really matter, because nowadays in movies they just bring in somebody else to do the song. Right. So that doesn't matter. Okay, so for Uncle Remus I had two picks. The first one was Stephen McKinley Henderson or Jeffrey Wright.
I do not know who either one of those are.
Okay, that's why we've got this up. So I will pull this up here. And I think this is good because I wanted to... Stephen McKinley Henderson, he was in Fences, I think, recently. And Lady Bird, Beau was Afraid, he was in Lincoln.
Okay.
But this is him, and I just felt like
Yeah, he does kind
he
of
looks the part,
Yep.
right? He looks a lot like the actor that played Uncle Remus in
Yep.
the 46 version. Not portly, heavier set,
Yep.
a little bit, but not bad. I thought he would be good because he's got just that kind of like uncle face, or like the kind older gentleman face. And then Jeffrey Wright.
I've seen him before.
Yeah, he's been in lots of things. He was in The Batman, Shaft, Broken
Sure.
Flowers.
He looks similar to the actor that played Uncle Remus as well.
Yeah,
Yep.
and so I just felt like they were lesser known, because at first I was like, well, they'd probably cast Will Smith in the remake,
No, we don't want Will Smith.
No, we don't want Will Smith.
Smith.
But like that would be one of the things where it's like, well, he already played the genie in Aladdin, and so now he can do that.
Not that Will Smith isn't a very talented actor, and he could do the singing.
Yeah, I mean, he could do the stuff. I'm just,
Yeah.
So those are my two picks.
Yep, that makes sense.
I could go. I would be happy with either. I'd be happy with Denzel too.
Oh yeah, well, I went with Denzel just because I was like, oh, this is gonna be controversial.
Yeah.
We have to have the main stars have to be people who are respected.
Yeah,
and who they're not gonna get. You're not gonna give Denzel Washington flack about
no
a serious role.
Yeah, probably.
So they have to be able to take the heat. Who do you want to do
otherwise,
next?
like Samuel L. Jackson was like, he's kind of like the first one that like popped into my head, but I was like, he's kind of overplayed.
He couldn't do the Sam Jackson
so
shtick. He could be a background character. He could be one of the other older guys running around that they run into.
Yeah. So let's do Sally, which is the mom.
Sally, which is the mom. I have two people, and my first
I have two people as well.
Oh, okay. Why don't you go first, because they're gonna know who mine are.
All right. So Sally. Well, and I picked some known people for other stuff. I wanted Uncle Remus. Like I wanted that look, kind of like I wanted the actor to innately have that look.
Sure.
To be like the fatherly or the grandfatherly. Like I would totally sit down and listen to this dude tell a story about literally anything.
Right.
And not in a creepy way.
Yeah.
That's why I didn't put Joe Biden down to play Uncle Remus. Anyway, so for Sally, I put Jessica Chastain.
I've heard that. I don't know who that is. Yeah.
We'll look it up so Mike can see. And then the other one was Bryce Dallas Howard.
Okay.
But she was in, Bryce Dallas Howard was in the new Jurassic Parks.
Oh, yeah, I know who that is. Oh, okay. I've seen her before.
I wanted someone kind of like, that could do like kind of the Southern Belle type thing. So
yes. My first choice was a well-known Southern musician.
Go on.
Miley Cyrus.
Okay.
I thought that first of all, Miley Cyrus. So in my ideal remake, there's going to be a musical part with the grandmother and with the mother being nasty, unpleasant people.
Okay, yeah.
So I wanted the mother to have some chops.
Yes.
And Miley Cyrus, of course, can do that role.
Yes.
And she's
got the attitude to be able to pull off kind of the...
She could be the wicked mother.
Because, you need that. You need somebody that has that kind of edge to be the mom, because when she's talking to Uncle Remus, it's,
Yeah, you do not like her. Yeah. Actively, she is unpleasant. Even the child, Johnny, doesn't like his own mother.
Yeah.
And the husband is kind of doesn't like his own wife a little bit. He's like, I don't know.
Yeah, because there was kind of a little subplot of that too, where the grandmother was like, "Well, Johnny needs his dad, and so do you." Yeah. To the mom. So.
Yeah, the mom's like, "I'm a strong, independent woman."
Yeah.
Blah, 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 blah.
So the dad.
You can see that.
Who would you cast as the dad?
Well, first of all, my second choice for the mother was Scarlett Johansson.
Oh, okay.
Just because she's getting older and she's got acting chops, and she could do the role, and she's well known.
Yeah.
And people would be like, "Oh, that's okay."
Yeah.
And that's kind of in the back of my mind. I'm like, you have to have these people that they're not going to run away from the role. Yeah. My father was Chris Pine.
Okay, that's a good one.
Yeah,
I picked Patrick Wilson because he just has the sideburns already.
Yeah.
Mostly, and he's got, like the dad's not in there a whole lot, so you don't really have to do anything. And Patrick Wilson is the star of the Insidious franchise, right?
Yeah,
I think so. Like he's got enough acting chops to play the dad. Kind of aloof or focused on his troubles at home.
Yep.
And I just thought he looked an awful lot like the person they cast as the dad in the original one anyway. And, he's
I thought
he's
Robert
an inoffensive...
Pattinson on the look, but Robert Pattinson's not an American from the South.
Yep.
And that, to me, would be important.
Yes. And like, yeah. I mean, the dad isn't a huge
he's
role.
only in 2 scenes, basically.
It's basically just who would you want to see.
Right. He adds subtext to the beginning and to the end of the story for the political backdrop of the film.
I mean, you could certainly, and we'll talk about this part later, but you could certainly give more scenes to the dad, or have him in a few more scenes.
Yeah.
Just to kind of like round out the character a little bit.
He's a friction creator in the story, so...
All right, so Aunt Tempe.
Aunt Tempe. No, I have the same actress for both my fantasy version and my Disney blah 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 version. And
we said it wasn't Lizzo.
Not Lizzo, and this is important to me. So Hattie McDaniel was the first black woman to win an Oscar. Who was the second black woman to ever win an Oscar? Whoopi Goldberg.
Okay.
And I thought that Whoopi Goldberg,
she would be good at that.
She's got the abilities, and it's a nice tie-in with the Oscar things. Like, there's a lot of politics there.
Yeah.
And I haven't seen Whoopi Goldberg in a film in a long time, and I'd really like to see her.
Well, isn't she doing like a news show?
She's
or
on
like
The
a
View
talking
or
heads show or whatever they call them.
It's a waste of her talent.
Yeah.
So
I had Octavia Spencer.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that makes sense too.
I just, someone with acting chops that can do it. I feel like if she were given a big song and dance number, she's spry enough to be able to do it.
Right. I just want to see Whoopi Goldberg with her dreadlocks on the screen, like doing the dance and the singing.
Yeah. Full disclosure, I didn't cast any of the kids. I didn't cast Johnny, Ginny, or Toby because I just kind of felt in my heart that it would just be casting some unknowns.
On my version, I did not cast the kids. Okay. On the Disney version, I did cast the kids.
Yeah. So we're on the same. So the grandmother, who would you do as the grandmother?
All right. So I had an initial jerk, and then I thought about it, and I picked somebody else.
I know. I had an initial jerk, too, and then I picked someone else.
Yeah. Who's your initial one?
Oh, man, I just had her name in my head. She's the one that always wins Oscars all the time, and she's in
Meryl
everything.
Streep.
Yeah, Meryl Streep. That was like my initial. I was like, oh, Meryl Streep.
She's my grandmother for the Disneyfication version.
Okay, yeah.
But my initial jerk was Paula Deen because she's like well known and she's publicly a not nice person. Yes. And I was like, on second thought, I'm like, she's probably not going to be able to do any singing with Miley Cyrus.
Yeah.
So I picked Kathy Bates.
Ooh, hey, that's a good one.
Yeah,
I picked. I went a little different. So, like, I tried to cast body type for most of the other ones. For the grandmother, I picked Sigourney Weaver.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Because I thought she'd have the gravitas to be able to
play
a complex character.
Yeah,
right. Because the grandma is sometimes mean, but sometimes nice, and like she sometimes dislikes the black people, but dislikes her daughter-in-law. But also has to be nice to the daughter-in-law. So, like, it's kind of like layers that this actress would have to portray.
Right, and that's why I went away from Paula Deen. I don't know if she's got the abilities to do that effectively on screen.
And there's such public outcry about her that it would be a very controversial casting choice.
Right.
Just for, like, box office, let's say.
Yeah, exactly.
And then I did go ahead and I cast Miss Favors, which is the mother of the three little rapscallions.
Oh, okay. I did not.
Okay.
I did
so
not.
This is the mom. She's got scenes.
Yeah, she does.
And dialogue. I picked Mia Goth. So she was in X, but I thought, because she's done all these horror films, but she has like a really, really nice kind of like presence. So it's like...
Oh, okay. Sure. She looks like she could be a poor white lady.
But, like, look in some of these...
Oh, sure.
Things. Like, she could totally play that.
Yeah.
And she could do it where she could be very nice to the daughter, Ginny, which is how the mom is, and pretty nasty to the boys, which is kind of how it is. And so Mia Goth, if you haven't seen X or Pearl, like, I highly, highly recommend those. And she can flip like in a heartbeat.
Okay.
From like,
0 to 100.
Yeah. So those were kind of my picks.
So I did more.
Oh, okay.
I did more.
Yeah, did you do the voices for the animated ones?
I did do the voices for the animated ones. So for Briar Rabbit, who's the main protagonist, I thought Tracy Morgan would be a great voice actor. And then I looked at the original script, and James Beckett, he voiced the fox.
Yep.
So I was like, well, they could have Denzel Washington voice Briar Rabbit and just do a little turn.
Yep.
And that would be acceptable. But I thought Tracy Morgan would be great because he's kind of a goofy character who's fun-loving.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, Tracy Morgan, that's good. I could do that.
Yeah, Chris Rock would be okay,
Chris
too.
Rock
I think.
could do it.
Like,
oh, for sure.
It's just a distinct voice. You don't have to like Chris Rock to, to support him in this, because it's just a voice, right?
It's just a voice. So I also did the Fox.
Okay.
And to me, that screamed Eddie Murphy.
Yeah.
He's an incredible voice actor, and the Fox talks a lot.
Yes.
And
does a lot of the fast talking that Eddie Murphy is
he's well known for. Yeah, Eddie Murphy would be great. The bear, I only had one idea for the bear, and that would be Larry the Cable Guy.
Okay.
Because he's kind of the dumb Southern accent stereotype.
Yep. And he's done voice acting in Cars.
Right.
Cars franchise.
Larry the Cable Guy has that down. Like, he's got that shtick down.
I would want... So, Larry the Cable Guy in Cars, I think, was kind of the height of the blue-collar comedy tour. So, he was doing a lot of his Larry the Cable Guy isms
Mm-hmm.
in the movie Cars. So I would want Larry the Cable Guy to not be just doing
No.
the Larry the Cable Guy shtick. I'd want him to be doing the voice
Right.
as a whole new character.
Yeah, I would want him to do
But
the
with
bear
with his like
character
cadence and stuff. But I don't need the like
he's got to be brutish and violent.
I don't want him
just
to be
like the
like
bear.
that's funny right there.
Yeah, exactly.
Like I don't need that shtick from him.
Yeah.
But he could do it.
He needs to be the dumb, violent animal.
Yeah. Now I think in the original 1946 version, all of the animated characters were voiced by black actors.
Yes, they were.
So I was going to do the voices, and I kind of got stuck because I'm like, I don't really know who. I mean, like James Earl Jones would be awesome.
James Earl Jones is the
bear.
frog.
Oh, the frog. Okay,
That's who I had him as the frog.
Yeah,
Yeah, because he had that real deep, gravelly voice. And I'm like, he was kind of a narrator and not directly involved. And I was like, that's perfect for James. Before, that's pretty much our recasting. But now I have the new and improved casting.
All right, let's do the one you're sending to Bob Iger's desk.
All right, so the grandmother, who's evil. She's got to be evil, and she has to be Meryl Streep.
Yeah.
Because she's an evil character. She can do it.
Yep.
The mother, RuPaul.
Okay.
RuPaul, is very flamboyant, and the mother it's got to be. The father, Chaz Bono.
Okay.
Yep. Chaz is going to have to maybe lose some weight,
yep.
To fit in the carriage with all the other characters in that scene.
Yeah,
but Chaz Bono, all the way. The little boy, I can't remember his name now.
Johnny.
Toby.
Oh, Toby.
Yeah. It's going to be a girl now. We're recasting Toby.
Yep. Okay.
Any black girl will work.
Yep.
The little girl, Ginny, she's now going to be indigenous. She's not going to be white.
Yep.
Okay. Remus, Uncle Remus, is now Uncle Remus again, but it's going to be played by Leslie Jones.
Okay.
And not a Leslie Jones in drag, just Leslie Jones, and they're going to ignore everything and just say, my name is Uncle Remus, and I am Leslie Jones.
Yep.
Aunt Tempe, it's going to be Whoopi Goldberg again, because, it makes sense. It actually does make sense. It's too much. Briar Rabbit, Melissa McCarthy.
Yep.
Because Melissa McCarthy does that fast talk, and she's entertaining in that way. The Fox, because the Fox is nasty and unpleasant and smart, it's going to be Ellen DeGeneres.
Okay.
Yeah. The Bear, it's going to be Selma Hayek.
Okay.
Yep. Because you got to get some diversity in this casting.
Yes.
I had to get at least one Hispanic person as a main character.
Yep.
Now, Ginny is going to be any trans person of color, child. Doesn't matter. But it's got to be diversity.
Yep.
The brothers, the two evil brothers, are going to be white boys still. Got to be.
Yep.
Because they're evil.
Yeah. And
all that. And then the frog, who, again, very small role, more narration. It's going to be Dylan Mulvaney.
Okay.
Now, did you notice what I did with those?
Yes. Yes, I did. So, would you still set it in Reconstructionist South?
You could do it. You could recast it in the story time setting, like the old Walt Disney stories where he'd open it up in like a library setting. Yeah. And Uncle Remus could be there reading to Johnny and Toby. You know what I mean? And introduce it through this lens, and then they could go into a fantasy of Reconstructionist South. But you'd have to have the sharecroppers more openly not like their job.
Yeah. I was thinking about just taking it and setting it in some kind of like urban setting, like maybe like downtown Atlanta. But I was thinking maybe not modern times, but set it in like the desegregation era, the 1950s or whatever, right? And just kind of update it.
Have some a little bit civil more rights plots,
a little bit more modern. Yeah, get away from some of that, the plantation kind of stuff, since it's obviously offensive to people.
It is offensive to people, but it's
that doesn't mean it didn't happen. I'm just saying, like, if you want to make this film today, you can still call it Song of the South, set it in the South, set it in Atlanta or somewhere, and then have it be more about the integration or desegregation, right?
Right.
And then a lot of the stuff will still work, the tension between the mom and Uncle Remus.
Yes.
And some of that other stuff. So
yeah, I think that there should be more tension between the mother, the grandmother, and Uncle Remus.
Yeah.
There's subtext in the original that they couldn't fully explore.
Yeah, and it was a brisk like hour 20 minutes.
Yeah.
So it was not a long movie.
It's an hour and a half long movie. Well, it's an hour and 34 minutes, including the intro and the outro. So yeah.
What other changes would you make to it? You said you had added scenes, or
the added scenes would be the mother and the grandmother have to do a musical number where they're naughty and bad.
Yes.
Right, that's the thing. And then the sharecroppers, you could have the two scenes of the sharecroppers
Yep.
that they had going to and from the fields.
Yeah.
But they have to be like miserable and possibly, more politically active.
Yeah.
And then the end scene where they're all hovering around the manor house when Johnny was hurt, cut that.
Yeah.
We don't need that.
No. No. I think the song that the grandmother and mom would do would have to be something where they're not overtly singing about supporting racism and slavery, but it would be something along the lines of like the daughter-in-law would be like, "Oh, you had it so much easier when you were my age," to the grandmother, and they would kind of be like pining for the old days without actually explicitly saying like, "We want slavery back."
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
It would be something like,
yeah.
You know, where you could take it in one way and all the kids would take it as like, hey, change is good and look forward and stuff. I think everyone else would be like, they want slavery back.
If they were going to do a remake, I think they'd have to do a PG-13 and have a little more edge to it. Yeah, like it would be a teenager movie, like informational kind of with folklore tales in it.
Because you could totally make the Johnny character and the Toby character older.
Yeah, you could. And even as it is now, it's not a G movie anymore.
No.
Not with the level of violence in it.
Yeah.
It's
even though they don't show a lot of the violence, but
they talk about
when
it.
They cut the bear's tail off.
When the bear says yes, when the bear says he wants to knock his head off and then proceeds to try to knock his head off, and the fox tries to roast him on the spit and then does roast him alive on the spit. Like, yeah. It's definitely not G-rated for modern sensibilities. Yeah. PG, like PG-13, you know. So, but Disney's such a bunch of wussies. I don't get why they don't release this with disclaimer. It is no worse than Gone with the Wind.
Yeah, and it's no worse than like Aristocats, where they've got like the Siamese cats that are, you know, Asian stereotypes.
It's nowhere near as bad as Peter Pan.
Yeah.
That Peter Pan.
What makes the Red Man red?
Yeah, that is over the top.
Yeah.
Over the top.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I don't understand why they wouldn't. I feel like this is a movie is exactly what you need that disclaimer for, right? Like, there's still good stuff in this movie, and it's showing us how times were. We don't endorse the way things were, or whatever their disclaimer is, right? Like, this is about a specific time period in American history.
This would be a perfect one to release with a documentary with it. Like an hour-long documentary about the actors and about the times and about the context of the releases and the segregation that was going on and the backstories.
Who was that? There was a famous black actress that was calling for the release of this film. They wanted Disney to release it.
Oh, I don't know. Yeah, I just don't think that Disney thinks it's worth the effort.
Yeah, you would think, though, that it would be such an easy like cash grab for them. Because that's what they're interested in now, is they make like dumbed down versions of their animated films,
right?
Which weren't like cerebral to begin with,
right?
In the most part, and they dumb them down and make them live action and terrible, just so they can extend the copyright on their initial property,
exactly,
and make some money because everybody's going to go see them.
Yeah, I legit think that if they made a documentary explaining the context of everything and put a disclaimer on the movie,
get some historians, get some family of the actors that are still living, perhaps, and say like, this is what this movie meant to my dad, or
the actors themselves did interviews about the film, defending their roles because it was controversial. There were elements of the NAACP and things like that found the movie controversial when it was released.
Yeah,
and a lot of it had to do with the segregation and other factors in their society that were bullshit.
Yeah.
And I think that the World War II generation caught on to that pretty quick because of their efforts in the wars and things like that. There's background context to this stuff. I was expecting it to be bad.
I know. I thought it was, I mean, I don't know that I would go so far as to say like it's a good movie. I mean, it's not a bad movie.
Right.
It's not up there with like, I wouldn't say it's up there with Lion King or,
it's not
like,
as good as Snow White.
The classics,
the
Disney classics, but it's a refreshing tale because it's all legit stories from that era.
Right. It's as good as the movies that they released in the 80s.
Yeah.
We just watched, no, I can't remember it. It was a sci-fi movie from the 80s that was a Disney animated film, like The Black Cauldron.
Oh, Black Cauldron.
That movie stank.
Yeah.
That was wretched. This was better than The Black Cauldron. And you can still see, The Black Cauldron offensive. It's just garbage.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not very good.
So, I don't know that this movie would ever become kind of like an instant classic. I mean, it's got, but now it kind of is because one is hard to find, hard to watch, unless you can get it from the Internet Archive. We did the, I can't remember the guy's name, but it was the version 2 restoration.
Yep.
So if you just Google Song of the South V2 restoration, it'll pop right up. You can download it. You can watch it right in your browser. Because it's either fully in public domain or with a lot of these like fan edits and things, you can put them out for people to watch because it's for education purposes. And this is like preserving a piece of film history, so it's kind of like education.
Right, it's an Oscar winner.
There's a way, yeah. So and I mean, and it's an Oscar winner, and yeah, you can go back to like the 40s and stuff, and every Oscar-winning film is not necessarily a good film.
No,
but it was a good film for the time.
Right.
But there's so much, I think, surrounding this film that it would either become instant classic or like a cult classic, or
it would make a boatload of money.
Have you? It would make a ton of money.
It would make a boatload of money.
Yeah. Especially if you release it the right way and said, the first time in 4K, see the first African American Oscar winners defining performance or career defining performance or, whatever, what have you. Like celebrate the good things about it.
Yeah. Yeah, there's ways that they could do it. It's just not, Disney's so lazy right now. Maybe they won't be in another 10 years.
Well, that's the weird thing is that, they want to race swap and gender swap a lot of these characters to be more inclusive. And you've got this whole movie you made that is basically telling stories of people of color.
Yeah, traditional
on film,
American folklore.
And it doesn't get more inclusive than that.
No.
And then you've got these other films that are written and directed by, foreign people of color, like non-American people of color, and they usually resound with the audiences soaringly well because it's not the same Marvel template. It's not the same Disney remake template. It's not, you're not taking a voice that was never in the original film and forcing this voice onto a film that people have already come to love. Tell new stories with new characters that have new backgrounds. Right? We don't need a rehash of The Godfather with like mumble rappers or something, right? We don't need to recast that movie. We don't need to reshoot that movie. We don't need to have another version of The Godfather. Tell something new. People don't want the old stuff rehashed. That's why like this writer's strike, they're all out there with signs like, well, AI didn't write The Godfather. And so, well, neither did you. You're writing the Little Mermaid remake.
Right.
You're not writing The Godfather yourself. You're not writing some of these great films.
They make a great point, too, because when you're going to rewrite, let's say, The Little Mermaid, AI can rewrite The Little Mermaid.
Yeah.
Easily.
Oh, yeah.
It's kind of like a pharmacist.
Yeah.
A computer is better than your pharmacist. It's just the way it is.
Yeah.
A computer is probably going to be better than your general practitioner doctor at your local doctor place.
Yeah.
They're going to be better than the typical defense lawyer. It's just the way that the modern world is going to be changing radically. We're entering into a very interesting time. And it's going to be, a lot of people are going to lose their jobs. And hopefully our society adjusts like we have in the past.
Yep.
And we're going to have to make some changes to the way we do things.
Well, all these software programs and things, they're going to need to be upkept and updated. And so there's still going to be jobs out there.
Yeah, you're going to be a maintainer.
And AI is trained off of everything that's already been created. So it's not going to come out with a completely new thing, I don't think. Like, I don't know that it has imagination.
I think that
you know what I mean?
R&D is going to be bigger than ever.
Yeah.
Because
maybe you'll get the writers to feed it prompts that generate interesting stories.
Right.
Or whatever. But did you see this thing where the news media is writing articles now trying to convince people that they need to cancel their streaming services in solidarity with the writers' strike?
No, I haven't.
And the headlines are like, should you cancel your streaming services in solidarity of the writers' strike? And I'd never click on the article because I think it's just a dumb thing to even be mentioning. But, if they were turning out good stuff, I'd have no problem supporting the writers' strike. I don't really care. Like, now what? We get a couple months where we don't have to watch absolute trash being made?
Right.
Like, yeah, sign me up for that.
It's hard for me to have solidarity with the writer's strike. Let's put it that way.
I mean, want people that made Hocus Pocus 2.
I know.
And the last 3 Terminators or whatever it was, right?
So and all of the Star Wars stuff.
Yeah.
It's apparently the Rings of Power, which I haven't watched.
I haven't watched that yet either. But why would I show solidarity with poor writers, poor craftsmanship?
Right.
Exactly. Like, yeah, can AI do what you do? Yes, because you're turning out remakes of crap.
Yeah.
Like the worst version possible of this thing. You're taking like Little Mermaid or Aladdin.
Or Beauty and the Beast.
Like we made it like, I don't know, 20, 30 minutes into Aladdin, the live action, before we shut it off because it was the problem wasn't so much that they were like shitting all over Robin Williams. Because how can you have anybody compete with Robin Williams? I mean, He already did it. He did the role. But the filmmaking wasn't even good filmmaking when Aladdin was running through the alleyways. The shots and the editing was so bad. You never knew which way he was actually moving or where he was or what he was doing. Like there was close-ups on him, and then one time he's going this way, like left to right across screen, then he's going right to left across screen. And like any filmmaker knows, that's kind of basic, like orienting your audience in your film is if the character's running one way, you always keep them running that way, so you know he's always running away from something. Of course, he can take turns through the alleyway, but your camera movement needs to be
orient the viewer.
Yeah, orient the viewer. And this was none of it. And it was just like, what, you just ran out one day and had him run around and then you just slapped it together and said, hey, that's good enough.
Have you seen The Witcher, the new season of The Witcher?
No, I haven't seen any seasons of The Witcher. And now I probably won't, because I know the first couple seasons were really good. And then I heard that Henry is not in season 3 and they recast The Witcher.
Is in season 3.
Or season 4 or whatever.
Season 4 he's not going to be in. Season 3, the first 4 episodes were horrible.
Okay.
Disjointed. No spatial awareness where anybody is. They're not supposed to be near each other, but yet they are, and they're supposed to be in different continents, and yet they're there, and it's very difficult to even follow what they're trying to do.
Okay.
And there's characters that show up that you have no context who they are or what they're doing, and there's a lot of talk explaining instead of showing.
Yeah.
And then the last four episodes were back to form, even though I don't know if it was as good as those 2 seasons, but it was at least back to something that was more watchable.
Yeah.
And that's, again, it was not good, not great, not great.
And that's why I usually have my rule where I don't enjoy watching TV shows that are still currently in production.
Sure.
Because, I think the first one that kind of burned me was Lost.
Okay.
And I never finished watching Lost because they started doing they would do flashbacks. And then they started doing flash forwards, and then they started doing flash sideways or something. And then I was like, I don't know that these people know what they're doing. And now there's so many different flash forwards and backwards and stuff. I'm just confused and I don't know what's going on.
Right.
And, maybe if it was streaming days, you could just sit and watch all of them. You could binge them and then you would keep everything in your mind. But it got so complicated with all the different characters on the island, and were they on an island? Were they not on an island? And then I heard terrible things about the finale for Lost, and so I just never watched it.
Sure.
Because I just didn't care. Why would I subject myself to that just to watch a bad finale?
Mm-hmm.
And I by and large, Star Trek Enterprise was okay. I know a lot of people don't like it. It was frustrating because they didn't have all the technology that they had even in the original series. It's we'll just use your shields. Oh, we don't. We have armor plating, hull plating, whatever. But the season finale of that was terrible because it was an episode of Next Generation. Riker was there, and they were going through holodeck, and it's they didn't even give the actors of the show their own finale.
Mm-hmm.
They made it a Next Generation episode because they thought people would enjoy seeing Riker again.
Right.
Which, people do, but this is their own show, and it should kind of stand alone, and you should give the actors who worked so hard on it. Right. Even if you don't like it, but you should give the actors who worked on it their own finale.
Right.
That's kind of like stealing crossing the finish line before them and taking the trophy. And they ran the whole race and you just kind of hopped in at the end. So, but I don't know. I don't like things that are actively in development by and large because all it takes is they change a showrunner, they change a writer, they just want to take it in a different direction. And then you've got a terrible season. And then the whole thing's almost ruined for you. You're I can only watch, this many seasons of it.
Right. It's like Doctor Who.
Yeah, Doctor Who. Another one is Trailer Park Boys.
Oh, see, so I haven't watched any of the newer stuff.
So they did, they have the original run, and then they have, I think, 1 or 2 seasons that was a revival, and then I think they still have newer stuff now, right?
I think so. I think they're still active.
Because it was all in the full frame, the 4:3.
Yep.
And then the first season that they went to 16:9 was the new season. And so, but they wrapped it up. The first 4 or 5 seasons, whatever it was, of the original run of the show. And it was great. And then the next season was fine, but it was still kind of it was missing something because maybe the production quality was too high. And they were focused more on that and less on the actual comedy and
it's supposed to be gritty
characters.
Yeah, it's supposed to be Trailer Park Boys.
And, and then the last season was kind of they had some weird but it was all the same people doing it, but it's sometimes an idea only lasts for so long.
Right.
And then it's maybe try something new.
Yeah, they threw money at something that needed to not have money.
Yeah.
Potentially. I haven't seen it
yet. I don't know. Luke enjoys, I think, all of them.
I tried to get Sarah into it, and she doesn't like it, so I don't get a lot of alone TV time.
Yeah.
So if it's something that I want to watch that Sarah doesn't, it's that'll happen never.
Yeah.
And that's fine. I'm busy with life, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I try not to do the active stuff. The things I've kind of made combinations for would be Mandalorian.
Right.
You know, and I'll do the same for. I think Ahsoka's only a limited run. I think it's only going to be like 8 or 10 episodes.
Unfortunately, it's not.
And
that'll be
that. But I think she's going to be in Filoni's Star Wars movie that's still greenlit. I think it's going to wrap up like Bad Batch, Clone Wars, Rebels,
sure,
Ahsoka, and Mandalorian.
I haven't finished the last season of Bad Batch.
I don't know if it's going to wrap up every storyline, but it's going to tie them all together in a nice neat package. I mean, you and I already know how some of these things are intertwined.
Yes.
Right, with Mandalorian and going and seeing characters from Rebels.
Yep.
Just even in the background. You know,
yes.
He had one line of dialogue at that bar.
Yes.
You know, and it was just in passing. But we were both like, hey, it's, you know, him from Rebels. And you're like, holy cow. And, you know, with the hyperspace whales in The Mandalorian, you saw them, but they didn't explain what they were. But the last time we saw those was when Ezra left with them to find his own way to the Force. So, like, we know that all of these stories are intertwined some way, shape, or form.
Right. Yeah.
We don't know how it's going to happen, but you know,
I
think
lost. That's one of the weaknesses of the new Star Wars stuff is that like when Cad Bane made an appearance, my Sarah didn't really get that excited about it.
Yeah, but he's still a neat character. So,
for
you
sure.
know, but I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like people who have watched or consumed, well, especially a lot of the Filoni, Favreau Star Wars stuff, because they've been operating in kind of the gray spaces or the empty pages between the trilogy movies, like the original trilogy and the prequel trilogy. They've been kind of existing in that space where they can take characters and give them fully fleshed out backstories and make them way more interesting. So when you see them in the live action movies and stuff, you're like, oh, you know, and it just adds, like, it's an additive, it's not a subtractive thing, where a lot of the remakes, Disney remakes and stuff are subtractive. Like they make you hate the franchise more. Right. Like the way all the stuff with Han Solo and Luke in the sequel trilogy made me hate. I mean, I didn't hate the characters, but I hate what they did with them. Right. You know, so but by and large, in the last season of Mandalorian, I wasn't super thrilled with.
It was okay. It was a little disjointed. They could have taken half of it and threw it in the garbage can. And
I wish they would have done that with the weird, like, mind erase doctor guy. Like, just put that in the trash bin.
I don't understand where that was going. Not that it was bad. The cinematography was good. Fine. It was interesting.
I just don't like where they did it because they put it right smack dab in the middle of, like, a super exciting dogfight.
Yes.
And then they, like, cut to, I don't know, like a slice of life radio drama or something. Basically, right? Yeah. And it's like, we were just doing a dogfight. Like, I want more sweet aerial combat on the planet's surface, where you can actually see the ground and, like, your TIE fighters are chasing you and you've got all these, like, high-speed chases and, like, you can do all this, like, crazy stuff now with the CGI, and then you give us, like, a melodrama.
Right. A melodrama that didn't go anywhere.
And then you go back to the dogfight at the end, and you're like, well, I just wanted the dogfight.
If they tie this in next season, I think it's too late.
I think it's too late. They needed to have had something more tied in, and I think they were hoping that the whole cloning thing was going to be the tie-in, because that's what that guy did, right?
Right.
But they didn't. They needed to put a button on it or something and be like, now that we don't have that guy out there, we can do whatever we want with his tech. And then that would have been enough for me to be like, okay, fine. But that should have happened in that same episode.
Yes.
Probably. Right?
Or the next episode or somewhere near it.
Somewhere very close. And now it's too late.
Yeah.
It's timing.
They ruined their opportunity.
Unless he comes back. But even then,
right.
You know, it's almost too long.
He can't come back. Didn't they kill him off?
They melted his brain.
Right.
But I don't know that they explicitly killed him. I think they just made him like vegetable.
Sure.
Or I don't know if that's offensive to vegans.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Is it
they wiped
veganism?
They wiped his mind, I guess. So he's probably not all there anymore.
Yeah, exactly. So.
And they didn't really develop that female character out like I thought they should have.
Yeah, she's just a baddie.
Yeah, just
for no reason.
For the sake of being bad, I guess.
Yeah. It's like maybe she's still in contact with Moff Gideon or something.
Well, I think she was at the last episode.
Yeah.
But again, it was too many episodes in between.
Right.
Where it was kind of one of those things where even though I was watching them, like, I got through the season in like a week. I watched an episode a night or a couple episodes a night. It's still too much time in between because so much other stuff was happening and it was so disjointed to begin with. So you're already kind of like off balance. And then, you know, which can work in a film if you really know what you're doing. Like Memento is a really great example of that because, you know, you're believing the main character and then you find out, you know, that he's an unreliable narrator, you know, and that's a common writing trope, you know, very difficult to do.
Yes.
To do well.
Yes.
So
I am getting towards the end here. I have an inch left, I'd say.
Yeah.
And
I'm about the same.
Maybe a little more than an inch, but
I think we're probably gonna to save you all from listening to more Star Wars stuff.
Well,
or Dune stuff probably.
I am
we'll do some
done.
final thoughts and
It was very pleasant all the way through until about here. It's starting to get tasteless.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just bland.
I'm a little bit behind Mike on this, but it's getting to that point where, you'd probably think about putting this one down and just grabbing a fresh stick.
Yeah, that's where I'm at. Where it's not bad,
I thought it was a pretty good smoke all the way through.
Yeah, it was good.
I don't know that it's one I'm gonna rush out and always have in stock.
No,
you know what I mean.
No.
But it's good.
It's good. Yeah,
it's good.
So this was the Oliva Saison 2009.
Yes,
and it was good.
It was way better than either of the Undercrowns.
That is
so the first harvest, that must be the first tobacco leaves they harvest off the plant then?
I don't know what it means.
Okay. Well, that is your homework, the listener. You can find out what that means, and I know we've got another year one, right?
Yeah, we have at least.
But
one
I wonder,
more. I think we have
if that's a first harvest or if that's maybe like a second harvest or last harvest.
I think we have a first harvest 2011, and then there's another one that I can't remember.
I'd be curious if they did like a last harvest.
Maybe so.
That would be neat. Anyway, thanks for listening.
Be safe, have fun.